come once again to discuss things.
I'm gonna have to get started right away, and I'm gonna focus on the so get a little bit of preview on it.
Yeah.
I was a little like, let's go ahead and get into it. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is...
Jacob Carlson. My name is Jacob. Hello, people.
Jacob is once again the one that did the art for the character designs for Geeky Gentlemen. Of course, I have him do it, and then it seems like we go through a dry spell where I can't use any of the character designs.
Right.
That's just how the world works. But he did the drawing of me and him that you're seeing right now. I did the background. So, and Jacob, being the fool that he is, named his asking price to do episodes on Geoff Johns' The Flash, and while looking for Geoff Johns' The Flash, I stumbled across Grant Morrison and Mark Millar's The Flash, and so figured, hey, I'll get him to buy that, and we can review it too.
Because why not, right?
Indeed, why not is always the best excuse. So this is a collection that, I guess, it's weird that DC's putting them out this way, but whatever. But this is a collection of the Flash issues 130 to 141, plus a crossover with Green Arrow and Green Lantern, so you get one issue of Green Lantern, one issue of Green Arrow in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And these are primarily stories written by Mark Millar and Grant Morrison together, and then
the last
story,
one, right?
No, the last one's just Mark Millar.
Okay, yeah, that's what I meant. And then obviously the Green Arrow and then the Green Lantern issue are written by those writers. I think the Green Arrow issue is actually Chuck Dixon.
Yeah, it says Chuck Dixon and then Ron Mars, and he was the one writing Green Lantern at the time, so
okay,
that is about right. And it is a very dense read. We were just talking about this before we started recording, but
yeah,
I started reading this at 2 o'clock today and didn't finish it till like 8:45, and I stopped to eat dinner and stuff, but still, that's a really long read for a comic for me.
Yeah, I just mentioned to you before we started recording that it took me a lot longer to read it than I thought it was, because I had seen this in the comic shop, but didn't buy it. I bought it off of Amazon, and when I got it, I was like, wow, this thing is pretty thick. And I read it last night. I read about half of it, and then I read the other half of it this morning. But I should mention before we go on, when we talked about Geoff Johns' Flash, and when I sort of gave that prelude as to what Mark Waid had done and then what Geoff Johns did, this collection, The Flash by Grant Morrison and Mark Millar, this is a collection of the issues that Morrison and Millar wrote during Mark Waid's break, when he was writing The Flash in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So when he left in 97, Morrison and Millar took over. And then obviously Mark Millar wrote the last story with the Black Flash, and then Waid came back in 98.
Gotcha.
So this is this collection, and the art is very, very, very 90s to me. So this is very fitting.
Well, it's funny, we talked so much about the art in that first arc of the Geoff Johns book, and absolutely none of that was, like, it is very 90s art, but nothing half as bad as that. Paul Ryan is the penciler for some of the beginning issues, and he's a much better artist than he is a politician.
Seconded.
Yeah. So honestly, the art, nothing in here really jumped out at me until we get to the second to last story arc, but that was more just, not really the art itself, just the clever design choices and attempts to communicate very Morrison-esque ideas. But I don't know, like, you messaged me about this before I got the chance to pick any of it up, and you kind of worried me. So I'm more curious about your thoughts on it so far.
Well, To give the people the knowledge of what happened, I sat down to read this last night, and so I believe every arc in this collection is 3 issues.
Yep.
So I sat down to read this last night as soon as I got it, and I finished the first 3-part story, which is Emergency Stop, which is that thing with the suit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, this is very weak for a Morrison story. So I messaged you, Ian, and I was like, are you sure you want to review this? Because I was like, wow, this is not very good. But I can say that it definitely picked up and got better as I went reading. I guess it was just that first story that just wasn't working for me. Maybe it was that the villain was a potentially haunted suit going around and wrapping itself around people and sucking out their life force.
I don't know, man. See, I really like that first arc. That kind of put me in just the right kind of
mood
for this. Well, okay, because it's really ham-fisted, subtext. Look at the subtext. But I really enjoy that kind of thing in comics. And so you have this story that is about Wally West getting the Speed Force energy suit. And to do that, you make the villain a literal superhero costume. And I don't know, that was a cool idea to me, and
that's something that I hadn't even thought of. So I guess it's more cyclical than I thought. I guess just I was reading it, I was like, well, this dialogue is kind of lame, and it's and the whole time travel thing is really cool, where we open it up and Wally's dead, and it's you have an hour until the Flash is dead or whatever, and that's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. I guess it was just, I don't know, maybe I just need to reread this story again, and try to get a better feel for it, but I just felt like it wasn't maybe as strong as Morrison's other work. But I had forgotten that Morrison and Millar were the people who created the Speed Force suit. I totally thought that was something Mark Waid had done during his run, because it was so long in the 90s. But somebody had told me that it was in Morrison's run, but that was a cool way to sort of bookend that arc, and because the villain is a suit, that's a connection that I didn't even make. So maybe it's better than I'm giving it credit for.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not. Oh, I'm echoing a little bit.
Sorry.
I'm not a huge fan of the design for the suit. I do like that it's just called the suit, but they make a really big mistake, I feel, with the art on it. It's not that it looks bad, it's that it doesn't look like it's an empty costume. The reveal is supposed to be that the mouthpiece isn't filled, but I don't know, it just kind of looks like a Sub-Zero mask or something to me.
Yeah, I picked up on that. I thought it was a full face mask, but when we got that full splash page, with the reveal of it, I noticed right away that you have the head and then what looks like the mouth being covered, and then you have the torso, but the left arm is looks like it's loose and not fitting, or there's no form under there.
Yeah,
but the right arm is full and muscular.
Yeah,
and then the right leg. So I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah, it's really inconsistent. The whole thing should look like that. So that was a little weird, and then you don't get that reveal till later. But I don't know, this story just works for me. It's a really great introduction. I love this 4 panels. We're going to go through this page by page, so really strap in.
Page by page.
I like this 4-panel sequence that's right next to that of, you get these scenic vistas that are all over the world, lightning strips, and then you just get little quick speech bubbles as the Flash is talking while he's running around the world. That's a cool nice. little visual. And then you're just suddenly in India, and I don't know, that really worked for me. But yeah, this story, I think the best way to do this is to go story arc by story arc, since they're all in 3 issues. This idea of, okay, the Flash is given an hour to solve his own murder with the whole time travel thing, that was a cool idea. I was pretty happy with how it was resolved by the end of the second issue. Or no, the first issue. Wow. I was pretty happy with how it was resolved there, and then you get just a brilliant tease at the end of it with the Flash's legs just horribly mangled.
Yeah.
Next to a really, I mean, that's almost damned iconic to me. The Flash in a wheelchair. There's something really interesting about that.
I've seen that cover everywhere when I'm looking up like imagery for the Flash. So that was a really cool full page spread to have.
Well, I have just a slight complaint because I had this a little bit with the last trade too.
Yeah.
This cover of the emergency stop, they put a little white box where the barcode went. It's literally a black frame around it. You could just quickly go into Photoshop
it, yeah.
and make that's so pointless. Okay, complaint over. But no, it's just like that's a cool cover, and then it does create an interesting challenge for the Flash, where he's like, okay, you know, yeah, I have super healing, but at a certain point, the damage can get so severe that even that's not quick enough, and so I like the idea of he has to create a Speed Force costume, and like it's not just something he does for fun; it's something that they do out of necessity. That's really neat.
And Jay is constantly telling him not to stand up because the suit is the only thing keeping him upright. Because I guess it's like compressing his legs so he can actually move. But to get back to your point about the panels in the beginning, the Flash is a character that lends itself to really creative art structures in comics, whether that be design choices, how you draw energy like the lightning, but especially paneling. And this stuff wasn't as, I guess, complicated as some of the newer stuff, because obviously as technology has progressed, we're able to do some pretty crazy things with Photoshop. And like Joshua Williamson's Flash, the guy who's writing Flash right now in Rebirth, the guy who's doing the art on that right now, Carmine I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name because I'll butcher it. He does a lot of great panel work too, but it's sort of complicated, and this is very like simple panel work, but it uses that speed and that kinetic energy to its advantage here. And I felt like the panel structure here was pretty good. Because normally, I mean, you said this when we talked about Jeff Johns' Flash, that Tom King has really brought you into paneling and panel structure, and he has for me too. But I've been starting to notice more of that, and it was pretty good here, especially when we get to those later arcs when Wally is traveling faster than instantaneous teleportation.
Yeah. And there's like some stuff, we'll get into it when I find a page to talk about, but there are some, like, I feel, not problems with the paneling, but problems with the lettering and placement of boxes and stuff like that, but we'll get to that eventually. I just want to talk about the costume and what I think is really brilliant. There's a lot of layers to this story. They're really ham-fisted.
The Speed Force costume?
Yeah, because like it's a really ham-fisted, layered thing, but it's just in such a, you know, blatant way that it totally works for me. Because everything about this is just like fashion puns. And there's a lot of talk about just clothing, and I really like that about it. Like, Wally hands Jay and Max Mercury the suit, and he's like, don't scrape up the threads or whatever he says.
Yeah.
And then, like, you get to the end where the new Speed Force costume is revealed, and thank God they didn't stick with this design. But you get to the end where the new Speed Force costume is revealed, and it says, next, fashion victims.
Yeah.
Like, that's just really, really ham-fisted, but in the best possible way. And it's funny, because I don't know too much about Kid Flash costume, but this costume that we see revealed in the last page of the second issue, it's totally, like, just a different colored version of the one he's wearing in Rebirth right now. At least with the cowl. With the way
kind of. I mean, he doesn't have, like, the eye goggles. When I saw this, I had seen this before, but I thought that Wally had just created the Speed Force suit and automatically had the traditional red one. So I was surprised that they went there. But when I saw the goggles, I was like, oh, the guy who did the character designs from Young Justice pulled the goggles from this. Because that's the only time the Flash has ever worn, like, goggles of any sort. So that was really cool. But the interesting thing about the Ginger Wally West's Rebirth suit is that it's a perfect blend of a Flash suit and a Kid Flash suit because it's red, but it has that bright crimson red, and then it has that like darker maroon red that has a little bit more brown in it in the places where the red was on his Kid Flash costume. So if you look at the placement of the yellow and red on Wally's Kid Flash costume, it's the same as the bright red and the crimson red and then the maroon red on his Rebirth costume. So that costume is a near perfect Flash costume, but I'm looking at this now and I'm definitely seeing that because Brett Booth was the guy who designed that, and he toned down the I guess the lightning effects on the suit. This suit that's in here, the yellow Speed Force one, doesn't have the yellow boots because it's made out of the yellow energy, but then you see those little white zigzag lines on his chest and then on his arms and then on his legs that show the little lightning stuff.
And it's a very in-your-face design, and he almost looks like
totally.
He almost looks like Mercury more than he does the Flash, if that makes sense. The Greek god Mercury. But it's cool to see that used briefly, and I'm glad that they got their senses together and got rid of it relatively quickly because it's kind of hideous. It's a little much.
It's just really bright.
Yeah, I can definitely tell whatever he is doing on the page. I'll give you that. We also talked about how, Wally's thing is that he can vibrate through objects, but he makes them explode by doing that. And so that's how he defeats the suit in this. That was kind of cool. But importantly, that doesn't keep, at least potentially, it from being a returning villain. Though I will say, its ultimate background of what it actually is, that it's not haunted, but it's some kind of alien entity, is a little weak.
Yeah.
I was hoping for something a little better than that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't know. Like I said earlier, I think that this arc maybe just rubbed me the wrong way when I read it. So maybe I'll feel differently when I read it again. But that last reveal of it being an alien entity was okay, why are we even seeding that this could potentially be a ghost if it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where if you give an answer that soon into writing it, it's probably not the right answer, but still, you want to at least tease actual possibilities of what you might do, not, just blatantly lie. And then the ending explanation is still kind of weak regardless. Anyway, then we get to the second... one thing I found interesting about this, and you usually don't see this in comics, is every arc perfectly, ends and leads into the next one. They set up everything.
It was so fluid, and that was just really nice, because the last page of the third issue of Emergency Stop was that Mirror Master reveal, and then that leads into the Through the Looking Glass thing. So this is really fluid, and I think that this is what DC does best when they collect things, and when they let writers do what they want to do, is they have these continuous stories that build story and not focus. They don't focus on continuity over too much story. Yeah.
And then you just get something that's kind of weird and kind of fun for 2 seconds, which is interesting as you get into the next story arc. Oh, hold on, before we talk about that. Grant Morrison, I love you to death, but literally having someone's words be backwards is really fucking confusing and very hard to read.
Yeah, I couldn't even make that out.
Okay, no, I sat here, and this is probably why it took me forever to get through this book, but I sat here and I figured out what her first sentence is. It's not only backwards, but it's from bottom to top. So it's...
Really?
Yeah. I swear to God, between you disappearing and all that stuff with Kabor, whoever that is, I never thought I'd raise so much as a smile again, Wally. And even knowing it, it's hard to read again.
That's crazy. Wow.
Grant Morrison never ever writes Zatanna then. Jesus Christ.
Before we move on really quickly, Wally and Linda are living in the mansion that Wally bought with the money that he won in the lotto, which he won in Mark Wade's part of the run. So he's not actually living in Keystone. He's living like outside of the city in this nice ass mansion that he was able to buy. And so I when I opened this up and I forget where it was where they were in the mansion the first time. I was like, wow, nice digs, and I was like, wait, he won the lottery. That's kind of stupid. And so that page with Mirror Master at the end is where Wally's coming home to the mansion and Linda's in there, and I'm like, man, like, can we just have Wally like be blue collar, and that's something Jeff Johns does, but like I think that he's in this mansion from like the point that he wins the lotto until the rest of Mark Wade's run. So
yeah,
we
should
should
see
be
it get blown up in the first trade of Jeff Johns. So yep. Then the Mirror Master story happens, and like this just kind of a basic, you know. I can't really imagine much more of a basic Mirror Master story, to be honest with you. It seems pretty by the numbers.
Neither can I. I mean, Mirror Master pulls off some tricks with the mirrors. The Flash has to figure out some clever way to stop him. And then once he does, there's some final twist. And then he beats him. And then the Flash disables his gun, and it's like, wait, like, something else is going to happen because you disabled my gun, and then the Flash has to go and get a part to fix it. And then they fix it, and then the thing's over. So it is pretty by the books.
Yeah.
And
I like stuff like that. I like just simple one-and-done kind of stories like that, and I don't feel like they're done enough in modern comics anymore, so it's refreshing to see something like that.
Totally. I will say that the ending was cool. When the Flash turned off the lights and he's saying you're not going to be able to escape and use your mirror shit without any light to reflect, so then he turns off the lights. So he's stuck in there and he really can't do anything without the light to reflect with his mirrors and stuff, which is cool.
Yeah, that I'm pretty sure. Like, it's really weird because I didn't realize, when I saw Mark Millar, I was like, oh, I didn't realize Millar was an artist too. But no, it's Grant Morrison and Mark Millar writing every issue almost together.
Yes.
And so I'm really having a hard time deciding who to give credit for because they're both really good and they're both Scottish. So it's like really hard to pinpoint what might be like a tell, right?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because when I was reading this, I was attempting to decipher who did what when they wrote this. Because when we get to the later story arcs, it was very apparent to me that Grant Morrison is too good of a writer to write, my name is Wally West, I'm the fastest man alive, every 5 fucking lines. Like, he's not somebody who would do that. And so I would assume that it would be Mark Millar, but Mark Millar studied under Grant Morrison, so I wish that either Morrison or Millar had come out and said, like, oh, when I did this, this is what we did, just so we had some clarity as to who did what, because it's very ambiguous. And,
you know, it's one of those things where some decisions like that may just be editorial. So, I don't know, but, like, I'm just looking at this page of the Flash after he ran through a prism and split off into 7 different colored flashes. And that is so fucking Silver Age.
Oh yeah, this is totally Silver Age. That's something I meant to bring up in the beginning. This is like classic Trippy Morrison, but classic Trippy Morrison is always like Silver Age throwback. And that was probably like one of the best things about this, is how classic it feels and how it builds on the legacy and the history that DC had at this point.
Yeah, well, what's funny to me is, being a Green Lantern fan, the fact that you have the Flash split into not only 7 different colored flashes, but they are all, he says they're different, like, sides of his emotions.
Yes, so this is like a prelude to that, and they're all like arguing.
Yeah, and
Like the red one is like, "Bull, let's just go back and kill that guy,"
and that's
the yeah. Go ahead.
that like perfectly lines up with the emotional spectrum. It's not like 100%. Like there's the pink one is saying, "Who are you kidding? We're finished." That's not exactly like super in line with love, but you got the blue one who's like, "Keep cool, we'll figure something out." That's very hopeful, and that's the Blue Lantern. So I don't know. I was kind of impressed that Grant Morrison obviously time traveled using the powers of LSD and figured out what Jeff Johns would set up in Green Lantern.
Well,
it's hilarious.
the rainbow lightning colors is something that's kind of canon now, but not really. And I can explain that if you and I ever talk about the Speed Force or other comic book shenanigans. But the different lightning colors representing different levels of speed is actually representative of a scientific concept, and the emotional spectrum isn't. So it's really cool to see this like whimsical thing of like the Flash split up into like different colors, and then years later Jeff Johns does the emotional spectrum, and then now we have rainbow speedsters now, or at least rainbow speedster lightning.
Yeah, it's all kooky. So I don't know, the Mirror Master story, like this is the section where it's not really an arc. It's just kind of okay. Wally West is paralyzed for a while, so he's dealing with it, and it's a good way to get him back to like the traditional costume, but it is Speed Force style now. That was just cool.
Yeah, this the Jay Garrick issue is the next one. This one was bomb. The voice that they have for Jay Garrick is on point. It's so perfect and fits him. It's great.
Yeah, and I really like how it opens and closes with Jay Garrick sitting down with an old enemy. And I don't know, there's some really interesting stuff in here, like Jay Garrick going to, what's his name, Johnny Thunder, who's like got Alzheimer's or something, he's losing his memories. And then you get this great moment where Jay Garrick pays before he leaves to go save the day, and Nightwing's like, "Man, that's who I want to be when I grow up." That was really cool.
That was great.
But then, like, there's that moment with him and Alan Scott talking. What is it? Alan Scott has this line, he's like, I've always envied how you've kept in touch with everyone over the years, Jay. I try my best, especially since we lost Rex and the others, but there aren't enough hours in the day. I'm half your age since I met the Starheart, but I feel like your father sometimes, with all my friends have dentures, and yours are just learning to shave. I really like that, the idea that the Flash never slows down. Because Jay Garrick kind of just is that grandfatherly figure, but he's still doing it. It's really neat.
And it's really important that Jay is the Flash that's still around and not Barry. And that Barry is the one who sacrificed himself. Because Jay is the one who started it all. And so we get that full sort of circle thing. I forget where it is in here, where like Wally is talking about how there's like a sign in Keystone City and it has him as the Flash on it, and he's like, I wonder when they'll change it back to Jay, because Jay Garrick is the Flash of Keystone, Barry is the Flash of Central City, and then Wally protects Keystone. So it's like Wally and Jay at the same time, but Jay is the first Flash, is the Keystone City speedster.
That's in the last story arc with the Black Flash, and it's that particular moment is Wally wondering, since he's no longer going to be the Flash, since he thinks he doesn't have his powers.
Right.
When they'll change it back to Jay being the hero of the city and all that.
I'm really digging this Alan Scott costume. I haven't read too much of him.
I have no respect for Alan Scott, so...
Oh, really? Okay, well then never mind then.
No, I mean, you can like his costume all you want, but just anyone that can get their ass kicked by a dude wearing some clogs I can't respect. I'm sorry. His weakness is wood. That's a really shitty weakness.
That's true. The Earth 2 Society, Alan Scott, is pretty good. But I hate how they draw Jay Garrick's helmet crooked all the time, or it's not fully on his head. Mimi, shh. Sorry, my dog. Mimi, shh. Right. Well, I may mute my mic periodically. She continues to bark, but Jay Garrick's helmet is almost never drawn like flat on his head, and that just pisses me off because everybody does it. I think it's like a joke that the artists have where they just do it and they do it lopsided.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, if you're moving quickly, how could it possibly stay straight?
Right.
If there's no, like, they don't draw it with a chin strap. If there's no chin strap, there's no way in hell it should be, by all laws of the universe, there is no way in hell that thing should stay on his head. So it would have, like, every time he comes to a stop, he would be lucky if it just spins around on his head for 10 minutes until it slowly stops. He would be lucky if that happened.
While we're talking costumes, the sole appearance of the rival, or like a robot resembling the rival, appears in one panel here, because the rival is traditionally the only Reverse Flash who doesn't have a reverse color scheme. But then there's that couple panels where Jay is going, around Keystone doing all this stuff. And then he ends up at the restaurant with Wally Nightwing. But before that, he fights some robot that has his costume, but it's Reverse Flash colored, and that is like the one and only appearance of any Jay Garrick Reverse Flash, which is really weird because it's just plopped in there and it's so like offhanded.
Well, it's weird because the helmet's yellow. It should be like black or something, not yellow.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Jay's helmet is silver, so maybe it's gold, and that's what they're going for, but I don't know.
It's too consistent with the shirt. I don't like the design. I'm glad they don't do that with Jay. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. See, Jay Garrick's a character I never really got into, but this issue really makes an argument for him. Just everything about how he acts in this is just wonderful. Like, his wife at the end when she's like, oh, great, he's got 61 seconds before he's late to dinner, and he's like, I think I'll have the stew.
You have that break-in panel there, and then he's just there. Like, you don't even get any, like, lightning or anything. He's just sitting there in a tux. And he's like, I think I'll have this, and then she's like, I haven't even seen the menu yet.
Like, she's getting ready to complain, and she hasn't even seen the menu. That's hilarious. But,
right.
I do want to talk about how this story comes to a close, though, before that point where, he looks the whole issue to find this guy's, this old villain's thinking cap that makes him smarter than everyone else. And, like, he gets it to him, the dude's dead, he puts it on his head, brings him back to life. He's like, what is it with you and saving people? Learn to lose every once in a while. A little humility prepares you for what lies ahead. That's really cool. I really like that. I really like the idea of, superheroes aren't meant to defeat death. They aren't meant to just prolong life inevitably. I really like that idea.
And then we get the Black Flash at the end. But I think that this death thing makes more sense with Jay Garrick, especially because we have that conversation with Alan Scott in the beginning. But the guy who gets revived is the Thinker. And this is one of the Thinker's better moments, because he hasn't been around in comics. He's been around since the Golden Age, but not a lot of people have used him. But this is a really strong moment showing how just down to earth he is, because superheroes are so not contrived, but just
over the top.
Over the top. And comics, the source material where these people come from are serialized, so people traditionally don't die in comics. So it's really great to see death handled in such a mature and just basic sort of way here with the Thinker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I really like that moment where he's like, "Why didn't you tell me today was your wedding anniversary?
Right.
Go be with the people you love, not some old guy you used to fight with." I don't know. That's a really good message, and that one really worked for me. Jay Garrick kind of sells it, I swear.
Yeah, and there's a really good Jay Garrick issue in book 2 of Jeff Johns. So I guess look forward to that when we talk about it too, since you're liking Jay Garrick.
Cool. Okay, let's move on to the second story arc, which is Three of a Kind. Just really briefly, because I remember I've yet to read Ron Marr's Green Lantern run outside of Emerald Twilight, Emerald Dawn, but or no, Emerald Twilight, New Dawn. Sorry, but this Steve did a review of like the first, I think, 12 issues or something of it.
Something like that.
And he brought up a point which I think is very much the case. Again, like it's really obvious and kind of annoying about the way Mars writes Kyle, which is Kyle's like really sexist in the way he represents women through constructs.
Right.
I think so, at least, because it's either Kyle or it's either Ron Mars or it's someone else doing the art for him, or I don't know what, but like you get Kyle and he makes like a freaking Baywatch construct at one point. It's just like, really, Kyle? Really? And I just finished rereading Rock of Ages, which was volume 3 of Grant Morrison's Justice League run in the 90s. And Kyle just randomly has got, you know, a sexy flight attendant or something as a construct at one point there. And this, I don't know, it's just like, you get that in this story arc too. I'm like, I just get annoyed with that. He creates a giant Pamela Anderson with the word Babe Watch across her chest. And that's just annoying. I don't
understand how Kyle's supposed to be a likable character when he's doing that kind of stuff. I understand that the 90s was like a different time, but like, I don't know.
It's just immature. Kyle's gotten a lot better.
Oh yeah, definitely. Cough cough Omega Man. Cough cough.
Yeah. Not even that. I love New Guardians. I'll defend New Guardians to my grave. I didn't realize I had to do that. I thought everyone just didn't read it, but I swear it's a good book.
I'll have to read it then.
Yeah. This issue though does the first, or this story arc does the first thing that I started really picking up on, and this book kind of dates itself, but like we start getting our first references to Saddam Hussein in this book, or in this story arc. And I was like, wow, this is incredibly 90s.
Right. When I saw that, I was kind of taken aback at first, and I had to be reminded that this was from that time period.
Yeah.
I mean, this crossover was really cool. So
I don't know. I'm of multiple minds on it. It's kind of neat to see the tension between Wally and Kyle, and you know, Connor's kind of just there. Connor's the one I know the absolute least about, but these are all characters who are the legacy heroes. And so it's interesting to see their dynamic and to see just them hanging out. You know, we talk about the Trinity, which is Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and then there's usually like the other pair of Green Lantern and Flash, and then just like a random third kind of gets in and out of that, and I think Green Arrow's kind of a good fit for that too then. So I don't know, it was fun getting to see these characters all hang out, and then they all share a very similar dynamic of being a legacy character in that way. It was
right.
neat.
That was something I picked up on right away. What I meant about the crossover being cool is that this was more of a seamless crossover than what DC has done in recent years, because it's so just like not like universal, you know what I mean? This isn't just like somebody this isn't like some Speed Force demon or somebody from the multiverse coming to attack. It's like, nope, we're going on vacation and then we run into these guys.
It is a really, really like traditional kind of DC thing. That is a very DC thing of just the heroes go on vacation but supervillains show up, right? The one thing that, like, it does feel pretty seamless. Like, you can tell it's different writers and different artists. Like, obviously the artists, but you can tell it's different writers, but it's not, like, too bad. It's just that the third issue, when it's actually in the Flash book again, we have this massive time jump. And that's...
Yeah, that was weird. I mean, I knew what they were doing almost right away. I just felt like the Dr. Polaris cliffhanger at the end of that second issue, I was like, damn, I'm ready for them to show us, like, the threat that is Dr. Polaris. And then we get, like, 2 lines from him in that second issue, and then everything else we get from him is, like, flashback stuff.
Yeah.
And, like,
yeah.
the sense of danger is lost in that situation because we already know that these people make it out all right.
Yeah, and then this thing does something else that I really like. I gotta find it real quick. It's this, like, brief exchange when Green Lantern's on the stand.
I will say, while you're looking for that, Connor Hawke, I, like, don't know anything about him either, other than him being in Morrison's JLA. But I think it was Polaris who called him, like, the illegitimate son of whatever, and that's just such, like, a snide, like, low blow that somebody would call him out on, which is really cool.
Okay, I found it. It was Superman Returns that brought up a plot hole in comics that I'd never considered in my entire life, which is Superman's really good at saving the day, but he's really bad at showing up for court dates. And I'd, like, never thought about that in my entire life, because most of the time it's the superhero that's the one that, like, you know, points out, or would be the only witness to these crimes. And then this has just such a great little moment in here where Green Lantern's on the stand and the lawyer's like, ladies and gentlemen, I hope the court will forgive me for addressing Mr. Lantern by his code name, but I was left with no alternate after he cited the 12th Amendment to hide his secret identity. And then the defense comes in, or the prosecution comes in, and he's like, even Superman takes the 12th Amendment. I'm like, yes, DC had to put an amendment into the United States Constitution so that superheroes could testify in court. That's the greatest thing ever.
Oh, I know. I love that. This issue, like the stuff in the court, is by far the strongest issue in this series of 3, because this really examines, like, law and how that and where superheroes have a place in law, and so that 12th Amendment thing was really, really cool and just a nice touch, especially because the prosecution brought up Superman right away, because he's the golden standard always. Even in his own universe, Superman is the golden standard, and he uses that when he's testifying in court. So that was really nice.
Yeah. I did get a kick out of them, like Morrison, Millar, whoever, pointing out the fact that Dr. Polaris is obviously a ripoff of Magneto. And it's like, don't you guys ever learn a new tune? You forgot to mention how you and your Brotherhood of Evil Mutants would rule the universe.
Yes, I caught that. Yes, that was hilarious. that was so funny.
Yeah. And, like, I enjoyed the other 2 issues well enough. It's not, like, the best crossover or anything, but I enjoyed it well enough. This last issue is definitely the strongest. And then I like how it ends, where it's like, well, even though you caught the bad guys, there's this legal loophole. And then we just actively use the Flash's superpower to read information super quick and be able to give, like, the perfect legal defense. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that was great. Because the speed reading is something that's brought up, but it only used if the Flash, like, needs to go and build something, like if a building is destroyed. So it was nice for it to be used in more of an epistemological sense, where he's not, like, doing this to go and do something physically, but he's doing this to prove a point, and in this case specifically to make sure that these guys actually, like, get sentencing for what they did. And that was really nice. Yeah,
I really liked that. I also like the running gag about Connor Hawke just being ridiculously attractive to women. And then how we end it is like, well, he goes, unbelievable, what does that guy have that I don't? And Linda's like, do you really want me to tell you? It's like, oh, shit.
Like, nope, don't even tell me. And see, the weird thing is, he's not drawn, at least to me, like a super attractive like hunk. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not trying to dispute what was going on. But I just found that interesting. Where I was like, really, out of all these guys, like Connor's the most like he's the lady killer, really?
Yeah. I will say this. This like actively annoyed me. Apparently, drinking out of Green Lantern construct cups makes everything taste like vinegar. Why?
Yeah,
Why would it make stuff taste like
vinegar?
That makes no sense. Like Grant Morrison writes, if the Justice League thing is to be taken, if I'm to give Morrison credit for this, Morrison writes the Green Lantern energy as plasma, not hard light. But even still, that would not make it taste it. It would just be warm. It would keep the liquid warm. That actively annoyed me. I'm like, that makes no sense, but it's so specific.
Yeah, that was I thought it was funny, but I don't know. So while we're on Linda, I have yet to read a Flash story where I'm shown things about his love interest at all that should make the Flash even remotely interested in her, and I'm constantly being told that the Flash loves this woman more than anything without being shown or told anything. So like in here, it's like, and I don't mean to ripe on the relationship stuff in here and in this issue, because it doesn't get to the forefront until we get to those later stories. But like, why out of every woman that Wally West can get is Linda Park the one? You know, because even more so than Barry, Wally is a ladies' man. He goes around and like gets with women all the time. That's something that Jeff Johns addressed early on in his run. Like, why is Linda the one? That's something we're never shown, like, at all. And if there's any information surrounding that, the audience is told that, and it's telling, not showing, which is bad writing. So it was just annoying to me, because we are in this transition period in these first couple of stories where Wally's thinking about marrying her, and we have this great relationship stuff with Joan and Jay Garrick, but I just don't get that vibe with Wally and Linda, and I can't necessarily pinpoint what it is outside of the fact that there really isn't anything about Linda that should make her, like, I guess, appealing, other than the fact that she's so ordinary for Wally, who is the extraordinary.
That's what they say, is Wally grew up around superheroes his whole life, and so Linda's just the one normal thing in his life, and he really loves the fact that she is just not a part of that world at all. That's the only thing we get in this book.
And I feel like that's a really lazy excuse. Yeah. Like, when I read that, I'm like, come on, man. Like, can't we just have these two people meet and, like, actually fall in love and like each other? Like, because we get a lot of, like, sweet talk where Wally calls him babe or baby or whatever. And I think it's even in these issues where Kyle Rayner is creating that giant babe watch thing where it's like, okay, like, let's not do this. But I just felt that there wasn't enough of either Linda doing things on her own or Linda proving that she is, like, good for Wally, you know, and I don't know. Just because we're in that transition period, I felt like we needed a little bit more of that, other than that line of, oh, she's ordinary, so that's why Wally's attracted to her.
Yeah, like, part of it might just be editorial. Again, that's it just seems like something like, okay, if he's going to be the Flash, then we should probably not have him dating around all the time. We should just, you know, give him, like, a solid love interest. So here's this character that's popped up now and again that they've teased doing romance with. That's the one he's ending up with. That's what it feels like to me. But you're right. It would be better to have something that really solidifies it. That being said, seeing them interact with each other, they do seem like a genuine couple.
Yeah, I did get that vibe. It's just, and maybe I am talking more about the Flash as a whole instead of what we're given here, but there hasn't been anything that I've read in the Flash that has shown me why Linda is the one for Wally or why Iris is the one for Barry. If I were to write the Flash, one of the first things that I would do is do a one shot within like my ongoing from the perspective of either Iris or Linda and really get inside their head and see what motivates them and what haunts them and stuff. Because Linda is basically a carbon copy of Iris at this point. She's getting married to Wally at the end here. She's a journalist at this point. So there really isn't anything to differentiate her from Iris as well. But again, I guess that's more broader Flash and less of what we get here. So sorry for if I'm just ripping on the Flash as a whole.
No, I mean it's cool. I didn't think of that because I don't know. I'm just so used to superhero girlfriend kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
and Batman's cool because he's the exception to that. I don't know. Yeah, I see where you're coming from now.
I mean, I'm used to the superhero girlfriend thing too. It just annoys me because you can do so much more with that.
And I mean, I'm never going to disagree with you that we should do more to develop the female characters so they're not just always damsel in distress or random, like just random, you're a good person kind of thing. So, okay, let's go ahead and talk about the end of this, which leads into the next story arc, which by far was my favorite of this run.
The human race thing?
Oh my god, that was cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
I loved, it's set up in such a great way as you just have this guy who's everything about him just screams speedster. He's got, jet shoes, and he's got, the lightning, and it's just, everything about him screams, this guy's a speedster from another world. And then he's fucking dead. And he's like, tell the Flash, even G-Force wasn't fast enough to save his homeworld from destruction. Now it's his turn. That's really, really cool. And again, it's a very, very ham-fisted title, but the human race, and how is this all saved? Everybody on Earth runs to help the Flash.
Yeah, and that's such, typical trippy, not even trippy, but just, outlandish Morrison.
Yeah.
And it was great. Again, some of the dialogue in here wasn't, my cup of tea, with him saying he's Wally West and the fastest man alive at almost every 5 lines. But the premise here and how Wally beat these gamblers was really cool. Yeah. And they have that line, I think it's in that last issue, where the imaginary friend, I forget his name because it was really weird. He's like, wow, that is the only time they've actually responded to somebody. They've been giving these commands and playing repeat on these set almost recording things this entire time that I've been here. And this is the only time that they've responded to, and that's because Wally again thinks on his feet and knows what he's doing and can find his way out of a situation and presents a gamble to these things that because they're gamblers they can't deny, and then he ends up beating them.
Everything about this is really classic Star Trek. There's an episode of TOS with 3 guys who are just gamblers, and all they do is just bet on lives, and so Kirk gets involved in this whole gladiatorial game and stuff. And that's exactly what's going on here, and I really, really like to see how Wally West does it, but I also love just the fucking scale of it. When he first starts racing this guy, it's okay, you have to outrun a black hole. And then as the race continues, okay, the beginning of the human race part 2 with just this spiral with the Flash's head on it, it makes no sense, but it looks so trippy. And
cool. Yeah, that looks so cool.
But then, you just got the Flash running through the world and all this stuff, and, you get a quick shout-out to Green Lantern, and I loved it. And then you get, the Flash is on Krypton as it implodes.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The page before that, though, I noticed all those, flashes of light were all New God stuff. and Krypton stuff, I think, because you see Darkseid, you see what looks to be Jor-El holding Kal-El, and maybe he's like running into Krypton, but I noticed that Darkseid face right away.
I didn't even
I think that's even Barda on the right where that yellow thing is.
I think you might be right.
And this is something too with the rainbow colors, with all the rainbow lightning. This is like potentially even seeding that in the modern era, which is really cool.
It is. It's just really, really neat to, like, just the scale of this is so epic. You know, I love the way that, like, all this works where everybody's got to run to help the Flash. It's so Goku and the Spirit Bomb. I don't know if you've ever watched Dragon Ball Z, but it's so Goku and the Spirit Bomb. Everybody give me your energy.
I have, but not religiously. But it's still a cool premise, because it's, again, like, everybody has to work together, even the villains, because it's not like what kind of life are you living, it's life and death. And everybody running around the world to help the Flash win this race is so great. But on that page where Krypton is, the page before, I just want to read this because this is really interesting. So this is Jay Garrick talking. First law of superheroes, superheroics, Wally, excuse me. Every problem has a solution. The bad guys go down shaking his fist, and the good guy always pulls through. You just haven't had a chance to figure out their weakness yet, because this is before Wally pulls that wager. And Wally snaps back with, the good guys always pull through, huh? Tell that to Uncle Barry, Jay. And Jay just says, Barry Allen died saving the universe, son. If all else fails, it's up to you to do the same. Now stay focused and keep moving. That is brilliant dialogue. And that is what the Flash stands for. Because out of any DC character, the Flash is DC's primary legacy character. And he is the primary legacy character because they've allowed the Flash to slump in sales and be reborn in Barry Allen, and then when Barry Allen slumped in sales, they killed him off and then replaced him with his protege, and then they replaced him with Bart Allen. And that is what the Flash is, a character who will sacrifice everything, including his life, to save everybody. And I'm really glad that Jay Garrick is the one to put Wally back on that track. After he's been running this race through space and time for, 8 days at this point? And again, that's something that maybe Barry Allen wouldn't have said if he was still there, but because of the loss of Barry Allen and Jay's experience, Jay's able to get him back on track. And that's just wonderful dialogue.
Yeah, and I really like just the scale of it, because it is such a cool fucking feat. It's on this cosmic scale, and it's just like, I will race you back to Earth. And he's like, I have instantaneous teleportation.
Yeah.
You can't possibly win this. It sounds like a good bet for you, Holmes. Drop the mic, walk away.
True. And I think in that page where he makes it there, where is this? Where is this?
What are you talking about? Where he starts the bet?
At the end, by the time the Titan, I guess the Titan is what they're called, by the time the Titan reaches Earth, I've already zigzagged around Jay Garrick and Superman more than 1,000,000 times. So not only is the Flash faster than instantaneous teleportation by a little bit, but he's faster than instantaneous teleportation by a lot of bit. Because he gets to Earth before this Titan and then races around everybody on the planet before he slows down and before the Titan gets there. That is crazy.
Yeah, and if we were on the battle forums where people bitch at each other and stuff, you'd be like, oh well, he had the whole Earth helping him, so it doesn't fucking matter. It's just cool on its own that it happened that way. It's just so fucking neat that it all worked together that way. And not only that, but he saves 2 worlds at once.
Yeah,
I love that about it.
Because I knew that Morrison was the one who made Wally West faster than instantaneous teleportation, and I knew that it was like a race against somebody before I sat down to read this, but I did not realize, because nobody had told me this, that another planet was hanging in the balance. So I was like, is this guy's planet gonna die? Like, is Wally gonna save Earth? And, like, this other dude's planet is gonna die? Because I had already seen some of the panels where everybody on Earth is celebrating. I'm like, man, Wally is not the type of character to celebrate after all these people on another planet dies. But with that wager he makes, he's able to save both people. And then you get those couple lines at the end where all of those people, like, you can't see them, you can't hear them, you can't feel them, but they're there and they're celebrating with us. Mm-hmm. So, you know, enjoy, have a good time celebrating. We did it.
Yep. And it is just really cool. It's like the perfect, it's that perfect move of just like, well, they're gamblers, so make a gamble. And, like, I like that he pits them against each other. He's like,
yeah, that was cool.
Guy goes, we can reach your world instantaneously. You cannot move faster than us. I'm betting I can. Do you accept the wager or not? And then the other Titan just comes in and is like, I'll wager he can beat you, too. Do you accept my challenge? Like, holy shit!
Like, wow, we are getting hardcore here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just really cool. And the thing about Wally West as the Flash is that he can transfer kinetic energy, but they were really vague as to whether or not Wally was actually absorbing the kinetic energy of every single moving thing on the planet. So part of me wants to say that, well, he wasn't absorbing the speed of everybody. He was just running super fucking fast.
Mm-hmm. I think he was. I think the way the story sets it up, I'd say it's a fair bet that however he was doing it, he was absorbing everyone else's energy to help him along the way. Because you need that for the stakes of him getting home in time and all that stuff. I really like this exchange of dialogue with Caracals, however you say his fucking name. I really love this exchange of dialogue when he first meets up with them and the guy explains the challenge. I've got to find it.
Is it in the first issue when he meets him?
Yeah.
And he's like, Wally!
Yeah, Wally. Okay, here it is. I've outraced 6 champions and only death ends the race. But we can spit in death's face, Wally. We can find a way. Wait a minute, what do you mean you only death ends the race? What are you talking about? How long have you been racing? I've raced 20 orbits and outrun 6 champions while I run the frequencies of Quizzles Endure. Where's it at? I thought I found it, but I don't think I found it. Okay, here it is. They'll have a challenge plan for us. It could be anything. I almost died in the fluid crystal oceans of Thenotron, the micromind. My opponent's name was Lumina. Where are we? What did we just do? We can't talk to them? We must race now. What happened to him? Her. She died in the fluid crystal oceans of the macromind. Like, that's just such a harsh thing. It's like, I almost died, but she did.
Yeah.
Well, fuck.
And that shows something that Wally could become if he didn't find a way out of this, because that character had been so drained from having to cheat to survive, and he knew that he was only preventing the inevitable, and that his people were preventing the inevitable, because they were running in a perpetual state, and it was because their lives depended on it. But a lot of his dialogue was really cool, because he was Wally West's imaginary friend who was real and who had to show him how to grow up again.
Okay, so my question is this, because I know Morrison. Don't know, I feel bad, because I really don't know who's doing what here. But I know Morrison, and I'm really tempted to say that this fucking radio life form was something that existed in the Silver Age that Morrison brought back, but I don't know.
I should have looked into that. I have never read a comic where that's been a thing, but then again, very few things from the Silver Age, other than like actual characters, are brought back. But that's a very good question, knowing Morrison.
Yeah, I mentioned it briefly, but I really, really love this scene of, we're on Oa 15 billion years ago. These are proto-guardians. They're cave people. That's fucking great.
Yeah, That was great.
Just to see the Guardians is like, in tunics with spears and stuff. That's really funny to me. Oh man. Like if the Flash ever meets the Guardians, he's gonna be like, "Yeah, I saw you guys when you were wearing furs and tunics. You saw our ancestors." Like that's really cool. It's so trippy. It's so fucking trippy, and it's just all over the place, and it's awesome.
That last bit though, where it segues from the celebration to the Flash saying, and that's the story of how the Flash defeated the Cosmic Gamblers. Like, wow, that's awesome too. He's just sitting in a classroom telling these kids this story, and that's such a perfect way to bookend it. And again, we get that nice transition into the next three-parter with the Black Flash appearing as that blur behind Wally in that picture.
Yeah, and I was really disappointed because I wanted to see Grant Morrison write the Black Flash, considering that this was late 90s. Because, okay, here's my stickler with the DC universe. Because DC, even if it's not done well, a lot of the big names that have worked for DC have been pretty fucking clever about taking things and making them work. Morrison does it all the time.
Because he's a good writer.
Yeah. So there are at least, 4 or 5 different incarnations of Death running around the DC universe.
Which is annoying.
Yeah, and, okay, so you got the Black Flash, you got the Black Racer from the New Gods, you got Death, you got Necron from Green Lantern, Death from Sandman, I mean. That's, a lot.
And then you have that weird story where the Flash is joined with the Black Racer in Darkseid War, and then he becomes a Black Flash. Mm-hmm. And that's a new thing.
I really wanted to see Morrison tackle the Black Flash after we just had, this was still very much in the wake of Gaiman and Sandman and Death. And I really want someone, as far as I know, no one has really put it all together to make those things work. Like, one guy tried it in an issue of the Atom, and Neil Gaiman slapped his ass down. So, someone really needs to take all these things and make it work, particularly with the way in which, to skip right to the end of this, particularly with the way that the Flash beats the Black Flash in this, because...
Yeah.
He goes into the future until the universe is over and death has no meaning as a concept anymore. And there's a very specific issue of Neil Gaiman's Death where she says, once the last living thing in the universe has died, I'll lock the door and be done. And I'm just like, okay, so wait, does she exist anymore after that? That's a really fucking good question.
Yeah. That's interesting. I haven't read that yet, but...
why the fuck are you even talking to me? Hang up the call right now. Go read all of Sandman. Thank me in the morning.
Will do. But Wally West beating the Black Flash by running to the end of time to the only place where death is a meaningless concept, and that's how he defeats it, that's something that I've heard about since we first saw Zoom on the TV show. Because obviously they changed his costume from the comics from being yellow to black, and they're like, wait, is Zoom the Black Flash? What are they doing? And then they had the time race, and then they made Zoom a time wraith in his suit still. Mm-hmm. So as soon as we heard about Zoom on the TV show, people were explaining in YouTube videos Zoom is going to be the Black Flash, and this is what's going to go down, and this is how the Flash beat him in the comics. And while that's a cool way to beat the Black Flash, I think my favorite line in that entire... Where is it? Right here. 800 miles, or 800 million years later, I'm distracted for an instant when I see there are... Or wait. Never mind. And on the next panel, Earth dies somewhere in the 2 billion years that follows, engulfed by its own red sun, with only a bearded man in bright red boots still alive to mourn it.
Yeah, and then what would that be? Vandal Savage, then, right?
Superman, right?
I would think Vandal Savage before I'd think Superman, because...
Does Savage have red boots?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. It's a hard one to think about.
Because bright red boots, like, Superman has always had those, except for his black and silver costume and then the first Rebirth costume. And that's immediately what came to mind when I read that. And I was like, that's really cool.
It could be either way, but, you say the Earth and there's only one man left and he's bearded, I think Vandal Savage before I think Superman. Huh.
I suppose that's fair.
One thing I like about that sequence of panels, though, is as Flash gets closer to the end of time, Death gets bigger and bigger in the panel because there's more of Death. There's
that was
life in proportion to death. John Green, from the channel Vlog Brothers, he's also an author, and he did a book that's really, really good called The Fault in Our Stars, got turned into a movie and all that jazz. Right. But there's this sequence where these two teenagers who are very much dying sit there and have a conversation about, I wonder if the amount of dead people outnumber the amount of living people. And this kid goes, oh yeah, I actually figured this out once. It's astronomical how many more dead people there are than living people. And he breaks down the whole math on it, and it's really, really profound to think about and shit. And so this just kind of it does exactly that, but just in images.
Visually.
Yeah, it doesn't even allude to the fact that there is more death. It just shows you that death is more and more constant and overwhelming as you reach the end of all things, until finally you reach the end of all things, and then death has no meaning anymore. That's really cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. I think the Black Flash is a cool, I guess, trial for Wally to overcome, especially in the series of things where he becomes the fastest man alive ever when he beats instantaneous teleportation, and what is the only thing that he could possibly lose to in a race after that?
And it's death. Yeah, this does a really good job of ramping up and ramping up and ramping up.
And that escalation is so nice. I will say that these first couple issues of the Black Flash thing are, I don't know, I don't want to say weird, but Linda being stuck in the Speed Force, and then Wally not being the Flash, and then the funeral, and I'm like, okay, this is just kind of cheesy. And then Linda's parents show up, and he doesn't recognize them at first. I was like, oh shit, dick move, Wally. I understand you're upset, but how can you not remember what they look like? And I was like, it just seemed by the book, kind of like the Mirror Master thing, but not in a good way, if that makes sense.
I don't know. See, a lot of this funeral stuff really did work for me because of some of the stuff that was going on in narration at the time.
The one thing that worked is that none of these adults were sincere enough to take off their playsuits to say goodbye.
Yeah, that's what I really liked.
That was really strong.
Yeah, and I don't know, just everything about these interactions people have in this first-person perspective of Wally in that page where you got Mirror Master, Superman, Green Lantern, Pied Piper, Captain Boomerang, Jesse Quick, and they're all talking to him. And it's you just see his inner monologue. There's I don't care, and Batman couldn't be here today. He finds funerals difficult, and I don't. Green Lantern's trying his best to be civil and everything, since these two have a bit of tension between them. He's like, oh, Kyle, this is so awkward, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know, I really like that. This kind of, really, nothing about this is hard for him just because Linda's gone. It's just he's rethinking his whole life in this moment. Because Wally West is this character who has lived around superheroes his entire life. And so the disillusionment he's feeling in the moment of losing someone...
Who wasn't.
Who wasn't, and so that adds into their relationship in an interesting way, but it also grounds him to all these people that he's said these same kind of things to. That these normal people, quote unquote, whose lives have been lost over the years that he's been fighting. I don't know, that stuff really resonated with me.
I think it is for me now too. In the way that you're explaining it, I guess that like what was going on, like the fact that she got trapped in the Speed Force and now there's a funeral for her and now we're doing this, and this, and he stopped being the Flash. I guess that was what wasn't working for me. Mm-hmm. But those couple of pieces of dialogue were a really nice touch. And I guess now that we're nearing the end of this, I guess the like ongoing thing here that you and I have picked up on is that this is Wally going through these trials, becoming crazy, ridiculous comic book like fast, but it's him psychologically having to go through these things where his life is going in a circular motion, and while he's going through these trials, things are happening where he's reacting through a lens of somebody who's been a part of this superhero culture since he was a child. Mm-hmm. And now that he's grown up, he has that more adult perspective, and he's sort of commenting on all those things. Mm-hmm. And I think that's working really well for Morrison and Millar as we go through these stories. That seems to be the through line through them.
Yeah, I was just really disappointed I didn't get Morrison's touch on here. I really wanted to see what Morrison was going to do with the Black Flash. That was the thing that made me buy it more than anything else. I saw Morrison's name and I saw the Black Flash on the cover, and I was like,
and then
God, yes.
And then it's just Millar, and when I saw that cover, I was like, no, please don't tell me Morrison left just in time for the Black Flash.
And he totally did. That's exactly what he did. And I was like,
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, you read the story, you read the human race, and you're like, oh my God, you can feel Morrison all over that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even though I don't know who specifically did what part, I can tell you it's Morrison doing a lot of this. That's just who he is, and it's just got his fingerprints on it. I almost want to take like a Morrison or not Morrison test. Like, you just give me some comics that I don't know who they were written by, and it's either Morrison or somebody else, and I gotta tell you, like, that should be a thing. And I feel like I would do really well at it. But I don't know, just like the whole situation here, the way everything's been written up to that point, I really, like, you can tell Millar is a good writer, and I do like a lot of stuff in this Black Flash thing. I just really wanted to see the Morrison take on it all.
Yeah.
Even though it gets pretty trippy, and it has that really brilliant solution, and I feel like that probably came from a conversation with Morrison, because he's talked about ideas like this before. And we eventually get it in Final Crisis, but still, I was really looking forward to that with Morrison.
I kind of wish Morrison would come back and do like maybe the Flash again and like some of these other characters, because he is one of the only people who can write the Trinity really well, and he's done that so many times. He wrote JLA, he wrote Superman, he wrote Batman, he wrote Wonder Woman, all this stuff that was great. And I know that Steve has said that he thinks out of Morrison's entire body of work that The Flash is one of his weakest. But I mean, that's not saying much, as like this story was bad, because comparatively speaking, Morrison has one of the best comic runs in history with Batman, and then he wrote the best Superman story ever told in All-Star Superman. So it's like the bar is already set so high. It's like I kind of want him to come back now after he's done all this amazing work and see what he can do, not just on The Flash, because he's already done these like crazy Morrison-esque things with the human race and leading up to the Black Flash, but maybe with some of these other characters. Like, I don't even think he's ever written Aquaman outside of JLA, right?
I don't believe so. I really want Morrison to do Green Lantern, because that's the last like big staple character.
I guess it would just be cool to see him do that.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to see him write some of those others, but I really wanted to see Morrison write it, and I feel like I'm shitting on Mark. I feel like such an asshole. I feel like Mark Millar's listening to this. He's like, I'm fucking not good enough for you, eh? Terrible accent. But
better than what I could do.
Yeah. I feel shitty because I'm being like really harsh on Mark Millar, but I bought this for Morrison, not for Mark Millar, so take that, Mark Millar.
I mean, that's not to say anything against Mark Millar. I think my biggest problem with this is that the dialogue is really spotty in places. I think what's going on is pretty good in most places, like the premises and the type of questions we're asking epistemologically and philosophically. Like all that stuff is really nice, and then that culminates in the Black Flash. And while Morrison isn't credited as somebody on that last story, his influence is definitely still there, because this is the conclusion of this escalation, of Wally West's power level. And then when this ends, we get Mark Waid back on the book again. Mm-hmm. So I think that Morrison's presence is definitely still here, and that Mark Millar did a good job sort of capping this part of Wally's run on the Flash off.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know, it's got a really, really neat feel to the way that this keeps building and building and building. And then, like you said, the dialogue does feel a bit off in places, and I think that is consistently one of Morrison's biggest problems, is he'll have characters say things, and like it might work in the story and everything, but it doesn't really sound like something a human being would ever actually say. Jack Kirby has the same problem to a greater degree. Well,
now that you say that, that makes me think that some of the spotty dialogue in the beginning was maybe more Morrison and less Millar. So praise to you, Mark Millar, if you didn't write a lot of the dialogue in the beginning.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Morrison's always had a little bit of trouble with dialogue. Like, you know, I don't go to Morrison for really sharp, witty dialogue. I go to him more for, grand, epic storytelling. If you want sharp, witty dialogue, Azzarella's your man. Azzarella's Wonder Woman has some of the sharpest... Like, you can cut yourself on that book. I swear. Just, there's so many, like, double entendres and just all kinds of wit in the dialogue of that book. But, that's not Morrison's strong suit. He could take a class in dialogue, I suppose, but I will agree. I think that there's some dialogue in here. You were talking a lot about the whole I'm Wally West, I'm the fastest man alive. I think that's more editorial than anything, because I swear that's something that just, it doesn't really feel like something Morrison would do.
You're probably right. I mean, I guess I'm not taking into consideration the editorial's place in like these drafts and what's going on, and I think that probably makes sense. It's just like annoying, I guess.
Yeah,
to get that, and that's the staple of the Flash. But when we're getting it all the time, it's very taxing, because to be constantly reminded of that all the time, like, we get it, it's the Flash. This is why I'm reading the book. It's the Flash. You don't need to tell me that he's the fastest man alive.
Yeah, and like that's the thing that bothers me about it, I think, is like a lot of the times it's not the first page of the issue. You get a little ways in the issue, and then he says it. It's like, come the fuck on with that. God damn it.
Right.
We're already halfway through the issue. We know who he is.
Yeah. I'm looking back at that page where the Black Flash gets bigger. Mm-hmm. So on that first panel, Wally's like normal size, and like his head and his torso is cut off by the panel. Then on the next panel, the Black Flash is almost about the same size. You see more of his head and more of his torso, and you see a little bit of his belt there, but it looks like it's colored red instead of yellow. Then on the next panel, you see the space above his head and the Black Flash is big, and then on the final panel, the Black Flash is reaching over him, overpowering him, and the Black Flash's head comes out of that panel.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is really nice panel work, and that has been a consistent good thing about this. Mm-hmm. I know I didn't really talk about that as we were going through here with the crossover stuff, but with the human race, it was nice too, because you got all those rainbow colors when he was running through time, sort of a through line of that Prism thing from the early Mirror Master story.
Yeah, and I didn't think to mention this in the first issue of the Black Flash run. Like right at the end of it, the thing that he's doing before he gets stopped from going to see Linda, where he would have died, quote unquote, is he's got Weather Wizard making a desert making a desert into like a Greenland, and that's very much a commentary on death. Like, that's more subtle, believe it or not, than a lot of the other things done in this book, because I didn't pick up on that till I was just flipping through. I'm like, oh, in a book about the inevitability of death, we have someone turning a desert into a grassland.
That is a really good point.
So that is
very good point.
Millar is a little bit more subtle than Morrison. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to give this a reread, just because some of the stuff that like I'm picking up on things just talking about it with you that I didn't pick up on initially. Like, I really do love this section here at the beginning of the second issue of the Black Flash run, where Flash imagines this wacky superhero life with Linda.
That was awesome.
And then it's like, and then at the end she goes, "I really did die that day when lightning bolt hit me, Wally. You were too late. I'm sorry." It's so fucking blunt.
Yeah,
painful.
That was great. And you got those like toddler rogues. I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, I don't know, I thought that was just really neat. And it's funny because I remember from reading The Flash, like, years later, when I tried to get in The Flash and it just didn't work for me, like, I remember Wally having kids that have superpowers that aren't speed, and that was a thing for him. And it's kind of weird to go back and see this where he imagined himself having children.
Yeah,
but of course they were speedsters.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of fun. Like, I can see a whole run of comics happening, and a lesser writer would have stretched this out into a whole series of issues before hitting us with this bombshell, and he wouldn't have just done it as a single page, or as just a handful of pages. Like, I love this little exchange of, "Linda, I just spoke to the doctor and he told me you're pregnant. That's right, Wally, and thanks to your super speed, the baby will be here in less than 9 minutes." That's really, like, I could totally see that as a whole issue unto itself, and a weaker writer would have just would have used that idea and run with it. Haha, would have taken that idea and run with it. But, like, Millar's confident enough in the story he's telling to just throw it in as an aside.
Definitely.
I really like that about this. The whole Flash and Linda getting married is 3 panels. That's really
and that first dream sequence is 4 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And they have that scene in the honeymoon where they're like yelling at each other, which I thought was great, because that's like totally accurate. But I think through this whole thing, Wally's in his costume, and I think that's like like even when he's kissing Linda at the wedding, he's still in his Flash costume. I think that's a little nod that, hey, like 3 pages into this, if you're saying what the hell is going on, that's a little nod to say, hey, maybe this isn't real or whatever.
Yeah. And it's also that we get this dated again at the funeral because apparently Al Gore showed up. Which is that was really fun. I don't know, I was just reading through this. It was cool to see Jesse Quick and Jay Garrick picking up the slack for Wally while he grieved. I thought that was neat.
Yeah. The Flash family. That's something I wanted to bring up too. Because this came out in a point in DC history where DC was embracing their history and continuity and the previous stories that were told, the Flash family is a really strong part of this. And I said when we talked about Jeff Johns' Flash that Mark Waid did a lot of heavy lifting to bring the Flash family into the modern era and make them characters that are important and that people should care about. And this is extending that. I mean, Jay has a presence here throughout the whole thing. He has that one issue where he is the narrating Flash. Max Mercury is in here. We haven't seen him since, before Barry Allen came back, I think, in 2009. Jesse Quick is here. Impulse is here a little bit. I wish we got a little bit more with him, because Impulse is a cool character. But the Flash family really does pick up the slack for him in a couple places when he has his legs broken, then when he loses his powers and he's no longer going to be the Flash. And that shows the strength of the Flash's character, that he's able to build this family around him, even more so of a family than Batman as Bruce Wayne, because Batman takes in all these kids and teaches them how to be heroes, but there's something that I think the Flash captures that maybe the Bat family doesn't, and that shows in Jay and Max's and Jesse's willingness to sort of take up the reins. And I think there was even a scene in here where Jesse was like on the watchtower, like talking to Martian Manhunter, like she just took on the role of the Flash during this time period, which is really, it was a nice touch.
Yeah, and then there's just like some really fun, clever writing, and like this is what I was talking about with. While I'll agree they don't do a ton to justify why they're together, I do totally buy Linda and Wally together. Like, when he proposes, of course he's dumb enough to take her to a graveyard, and then at the first sense that she's like, this is a terrible idea, Wally, he's like, okay, how about Paris? I'm wearing a tuxedo now. Is that cool?
Yeah. And it's the same thing as that Jay Garrick thing, where it's like you have a panel, and then the next panel, like, Jay was there at dinner with Joan, and that you have that panel break where Linda and Wally are at the
Eiffel Tower
at the graveyard, and then they're at Paris, and both like Wally must have like dressed Linda up and like did her hair and shit at super speed, and then got himself this tux at super speed, and while running over to Paris, which is really cool. And again, you don't see any like lightning coming off of him. He's just there.
Yeah,
and that shows that it is a nice and neat, subtle way to show that he has triumphed over these challenges to really escalate his speed.
Yeah, and what's also really neat is it really parallels the beginning of this run, where we have Wally and Linda in an exotic location halfway across the world. You know, we talked about that opening page, or that opening sequence of panels where they're running across the world and there's lightning, and then they get to India and the Taj Mahal and this nice romantic setting, and then it ends with this romantic setting in Paris at the Eiffel Tower. That was really cool.
Yeah,
I really like that. Yep. It's a great way to end their run. Yeah, I kind of agree with, like, this is certainly not the best thing that Morrison's ever had his hands in, but it's by no stretch of the imagination bad. It's pretty freaking cool all the way through. I really like how this all comes together.
I think that this embodies what Morrison does with the character, because, like, in comparison to some of his later stuff with Batman, because it's he takes this character, he nails down their voice, and then he takes them to their extreme. He escalates them. And he does the same thing with Superman, he does the same thing with Batman, Wonder Woman, and all the JLA members when he's writing JLA. But because this is kind of early in his writing career, I think it's a more down-to-earth Morrison and a more simple way of that Morrison-esque like escalation and that Silver Age sort of feel, and that really comes through in this series of issues.
Yeah. And then let's just talk about this last little backup of
that was cool.
What I think Mark Millar is showing us is that he puts a lot of thought into like stories he could tell, and he also decides that'd be cool, but I really wouldn't be saying much, so I'm not going to use it, but I'm still going to tell you my cool idea for a story. Because we just got that with this life that Wally imagined with Linda, and now we're just getting that real quick, like these things, like, okay, what can I tell a story about? He's like, oh, well, there's the fact that I take naps during fights. That's really, really funny. But yeah, what would that be? And he goes, I could maybe make that a couple interesting panels, but I couldn't make a whole story out of that. That's a really good tip. That's like Mark Millar actually showing, he's a pretty damn good writer, and he knows what not to write, which is, it's one of those things. It's like, I actually, not to compare myself to Mark Millar, but totally compare myself to Mark Millar. Writing this Green Lantern audio drama, Mogo is my favorite Green Lantern. And for a while, I really did want to put him in that story. But I realized that, I had this great idea of a scene and, this really cool idea of how to, not visualize, audiolize Mogo's voice as not just a person talking. I had all these great ideas for how to do Mogo in this story, but I'm like, it really wouldn't add anything.
Right.
I've already got Rotlop fans saying no to this idea. I don't need it as much as I would like to put it there. So it is that it's that really hard thing to do when you're writing to take a good idea and say no.
This doesn't add anything, and I have to sacrifice my own wants for the greater good of that character.
Yeah.
I think that every writer reaches that at some point. I'm somebody who wants to write and draw comics one day, but my foot in the door, in the comics is definitely going to be art. But I was writing this I was trying to do this rewrite of DC continuity in these past couple of years because I felt like DC was really missing that history and that legacy, and it focused around Wally West being the first Flash because Wally West is the best Flash, and I'm like, all right, well, I'll just start there, and I'll make the Titans the Premier League or the premier superhero team because they're better characters. Like Dick Grayson is a better character than Bruce Wayne at some point, but I reached this point right before Rebirth was announced, and DC actually brought all this continuity back and this history back, where I was like, you know what? This isn't good. This is cool, and I have cool scenes that I've written out, and I have cool character designs, but this isn't, this doesn't move the story forward. This doesn't add to what's already there. I need to sort of respect what's been there and limit my palette of my tools. Mm-hmm. And so I think that every writer reaches that point, and that backup. At first, I didn't really know what was going on, but then when we got to that last couple pages, I was like, all right, this is really hitting home for me, because I would like to write one day, and that's something that you have to overcome in comics because they are serialized, and writers have to continue other people's stories.
Yeah.
So it was a really cool bookend, because Mark Millar and Grant Morrison came on to write The Flash for 12 issues, and then Mark Waid came back. So it applies to their situation at the time when they were writing that, too.
Yeah, and just as a general nerdy thing, throughout this run, you see DC Comics lying around, and usually, and that's all over both DC and Marvel. They'll have their own comics lying around, but that's all over the place in this run, and this actually makes it work as part of the stories. Oh yeah, actually no, there's a DC Comics in DC Universe, and they just tell comic book-ized versions of these characters' escapades.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was really cool.
Well, I remember at one point listening to a podcast where someone was like, oh, there's this kid wearing a Spider-Man shirt inside this Spider-Man comic, and I was just like, that's too cheesy. And this guy's I could feel him looking her straight in the face going, are you serious? You don't think there would be superhero shirts in a world that actually has superheroes?
Yeah, it makes sense. People would capitalize on that.
Yeah, totally. So, I don't know. I thought that was really neat, really fun to see.
I did too.
I was really happy with this by the end. There are a couple things where I'm like, that was just okay or whatever. I did not roll my eyes or think anything in this was actively bad. I really, really enjoyed this volume.
Yeah, and we had sort of talked about this earlier, but that the emergency stop story with the suit, that was the thing that sort of put me off. But the more I got into this, I'm like, okay, I'm digging this. I like the escalation here. I like where we're going. And by the end, I sort of come around on this, and I think through talking this over with you that I need to give the first story a little bit more credit, and this run is more cyclical and comes more full circle than I had originally thought.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go on to ratings then. I'm going to give this... honestly, I'm going to go really high. I'm going to give this 4.5 out of 5 Polaroid cameras. Because I found that hilarious that Max Mercury takes a picture of the Flash family with a Polaroid.
I didn't even pick up on that. Now I'm going to have to go and look at the panel.
It's a huge big panel of the camera, and it says right across the top, Polaroid.
I know which panel you're talking about. I just didn't even look at the detail of
It's not even like a small thing.
Now
it's like some guy named Paul made the Polaroid, and it.
Oh,
like,
yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, it's a really silly thing.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, 4.5 out of 5 Polaroid cameras.
I'm gonna give this, for right now, I'm gonna give this a 4.25 because like I'm in the middle between a 4 and a 4.5, and I think that if I give this a second reading, I'll probably bump it up to a 4.5. But for right now, I'm gonna give this a 4.25. Rainbow Speedster colors.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Jake, thanks again for joining me for this. This was fun.
Thanks for having me on. I love talking Flash, and talking with you is even better.
Yeah, I know. I'm a nice little bonus. Alright, everyone, thanks very much for listening. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I am a wannabe philosopher.
You're the Flasher. Say you're the Flasher.
Oh, so this is an ongoing thing now? Alright, I'm the Flasher.
Yeah, you pervert. And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things. Oh, man.